some people characterize our present age as the attention economy. And I find that ironic because in the midst of all of these companies, parties, governments vying for our attention, it seems like people's attention spans have decreased, maybe even collapsed. Some people say that we have a shorter attention span now than a goldfish. What was I talking about? In any case, Justin, what does this notion of focus mean? How do we regain focus?
Yeah, well, this is a really important issue, Rob. And so you brought up some very important points there. So, since the mobile generation, since about 2002, our attention span has been cut in half as human beings. And so, one of the things that's important to understand about this is that when we talk about the attention economy, um, the technology that we're using nowadays is really distracting us in extraordinary ways. Right. So all of these tools that we're using, whether it's social media, whether it's our email inboxes, whether it's our WhatsApp, whatever it is, all of it is very cleverly designed. One of the most exciting things to the human mind is the unknown, right? So what happens is that when we're scrolling through social media, the reason why it's a never-ending scroll is because as each thing is coming up, the brain is lighting up with dopamine, excited about that next thing. And then as soon as that next thing comes, it's not nearly as exciting as what's next coming. And so we keep scrolling. And before we know it, a lot of our time has been consumed, right? But of course, that's going to give a lot of eyeballs to advertising. So that's the way it works. Also, when you look at your phone and you say you have WhatsApp or an email and you see that little red number that has a 2 or a 3 or a 10 or a 20, that's another way of lighting up the brain with the unknown. Like, oh, I wonder who it is. I wonder who
Right.
responded.
Right.
Right. So what's happening is that we're constantly checking our devices each and every day. And the impact of this is that not multitasking, we're actually task switching. And that's exhausting.
And that switching comes at a cost.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
what are some of the costs of this distraction economy?
Yeah. So actually, what the research is showing is that the average person's losing about 3 hours a day of productivity.
3 hours a day of productivity
Exactly.
compared to a couple decades ago.
Yeah. So what it is that when we're sitting down and we're working on something, right? The mind likes to focus on one task at a time, right? So one of the things that we often advise people to do to start to address this challenge is to create time blocks in our calendar and to focus, to follow one course until successful, to focus on one thing. Because as we focus on that one thing, what starts to happen is that the mind goes into that deeper flow state.
Yeah.
Right. But then it's all of a sudden, if you're focused on that one thing and all of a sudden you hear something chirp or buzz, or you go to check your email, your mind wanders. And then it takes a lot of time for your mind to get back into that deep level of flow that you were in around that task.
Yeah.
And so it's also exhausting too. So our minds weren't really meant to be darting our attention all around. And so this is impacting, we sit down to work at the beginning of the day. We have some really key things we want to get done. And then by the end of the day, oftentimes like, man, I didn't get the things I wanted to get done.
Yeah.
That creates more stress. And it's also impacting our lives and our relationships. We're having trouble meaningfully connecting, not just with ourselves, but also with the people around us.
I'd like some advice, some things that people can do to reclaim their focus. And I'll start by offering one experience I had recently. As you know, Justin, I finished a book, Proximity, that takes a lot of time and focus.
Yeah, yeah.
And I found at first I was futilely trying to do a little bit here, a little bit there, half an hour here, half an hour there. That doesn't work.
Yeah.
And so I said, I realized I need 3 hour blocks of dedicated time where I'm not distracted.
Yeah.
And at first I would set those 3 hour blocks. I'd sit down, my phone right next to me at the ready, because, I might need to look something up or whatever, but it still kept distracting me.
Yeah, yeah.
So after a couple of weeks of that, I said, you know what? When I'm going to have my 3 hours of writing time, my phone's going to be on the other side of the room. And so if I really need it, I'm going to get up out of my chair and go get my phone.
Exactly.
And so for me, that really helped not only improve the productivity, but I do believe it improved the quality of the book as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And everything you just talked about, so everything you shared, Rob, was amazing there. And this is also very helpful when you're in a team or an organization for all of us to learn about this, right? Because once we start to understand the importance and the value of the ability to go deep on certain tasks, and that's the way we get our best work done, we can then also honor other people. And so one of the things that we often encourage teams and organizations to do is that when people create these time blocks, in their calendar, that you choose these times where you feel most creative, most energized, and you can ask some of your team members you work most closely with to really honor that time. And it gives them the opportunity to say, do I really need to distract this person during this time, knowing the value of this type of work?
Well, so I've seen that from some of my friends and colleagues who are very senior executives, and they report the value of that, even if it's just 3 hours one day a week
Yeah.
of not being distracted. And the honest truth is, they're senior executives. They are more able to afford to be able to say to people, "Don't bother me in the afternoon on Thursday," whatever it is. But I think great corporate cultures allow everybody to realize that that's actually a thing, that that's an important thing, and it's
Yes.
something we protect. We don't want to abuse it,
Right.
but it's clearly something that makes us more effective as a company. So I can sort of see how a very senior executive could make this decision. By the way, it's actually very difficult for them because they have so many demands on their time. But if you're a new employee or a mid-level executive, for instance, how do you develop this discipline?
Yeah. Well, so one of the things I like to encourage people to do is, regardless of your title or where you are in the hierarchy, to remember that your every action, your every invitation is a form of leadership. And so, as you start to learn about these things and understand its value, you can very skillfully in an environment start to let people know about why you like to set aside time, because it allows you to do your best work. And you're also creating an invitation for them to actually reflect on the same thing and say, maybe I've gotten all spun out in all my distractions and things, and I'm actually not getting to the things that I'm prioritizing here or that I need to prioritize. So, no matter where you are in the hierarchy, you have that chance oftentimes to be an inspiration to others to say, it's important that we have this time to be able to focus.
Well, and I would guess the good news about opening that conversation is you're at very low risk of someone you're speaking with not understanding what you're talking about. They probably also feel distracted. They feel like they're going off in 1,000 directions. And they probably somewhere inside desire that luxury, that opportunity to focus.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So one of the questions that we can leave people with around this, which is so important, is just reflecting on, what is the most creative and energized time of day for you typically? For sometimes it could be for people first thing in the morning after working out, they feel energized. Other people, it might be late at night after the kids are asleep and they have that focused time. And then also to ask, what are some of the things that you can prioritize doing during that time? Because some of the most accomplished leaders and people in the world, one of the things that they're really good at is being able to look at a never ending to do list of things
Yeah.
and to be able to say the most important things are these. And I've got to have the discipline to set aside that time and do it well. And if I do that well, it's going to have a ripple effect for everybody else as well. So that's one of the things that we can all do, is reflect on what are those creative, energized times and what are those really key priorities that I need to focus on.
Great. Thanks, Justin.